Gaurav, can we have you on?
Yes, ma'am. I'm just showing my ticket. Can you play my presentation
I'll do
from?
that. Just a second.
Yes,
Yes,
yes. In the meantime, I just wanted to comment that I would agree with how Shell showed the first case, but in the second case, and I think that will become clear from my presentation, why in the second case we should not have gone ahead with the planned toric IOL.
A very good afternoon to everyone, and
I think
thank you,
we
Dr.
can just
Chitra,
show the
for inviting
presentation
me
and
for
then I'll
this
try to
interesting debate. And I'll try to do justice to what my friend Shell has told you. So, my viewpoint. So, here goes. So the question the question that was asked is that whether we should do in case of a PCR, whether we should put in a single piece toric lens and do a reverse optic capture versus a sulcus implanted monofocal lens with bioptics. And I will try to make my point for this. So the currently available toric IOLs are all in single piece design and meant for in the bag fixation. They're all hydrophobic acrylic or maybe hydrophilic acrylic, but none of them has been actually made for sulcus fixation, which is sad because today there are indications when you might want to put a toric lens in the sulcus. So the Zeiss lens, which is a hydrophilic lens and is plate haptics, and obviously we all understand should not be placed in the case of a PCR, very often dislocates into the vitreous cavity. The Technis toric lens, which is again a hydrophobic acrylic with square edges and has posteriorly angulated optic so that the haptics will have the optic pushing against the posterior capsule. And then the Alcon lens, which is has zero angulation. So these are the only lenses which are actually having a planar kind of a profile, and they're all hydrophobic acrylic. So why do we not want to implant a hydrophobic acrylic single piece lens into the sulcus? It's very clear. Almost 15-20 years back, we had lots of patients with situations with the UGH syndrome when some of these lenses were implanted into the sulcus. And the reason was a thick square edge haptics and the optics, which would cause iris rubbing and inflammation. And so it is anathema to actually implant these lenses into the sulcus because of both the haptics and the optics causing an iris rub. These are some of the studies by David Jank and Nick Mamelis and Thomas Etting and some of the top people who found these lenses. And since then, we don't like to implant these lenses into the sulcus. So if you read the conclusions, the intraocular lenses designed solely for the capsular bag should not be placed in the ciliary sulcus, and backup IOLs should be available with designs which are amenable for the sulcus. So this is how a single piece lens looks in profile, and you can see that it's not just the haptics which are thick and made of with the square edge to prevent PCO, but also the optic which has a very thick profile and a square edge which prevents PCO formation. But when put into the sulcus, can cause iris inflammation and iris rubbing and cause problems with that. So the IOL designs which are currently available are these. This is the 3-piece lens which we prefer to put into the sulcus if we have to, and then of course the single piece lenses. So 3-piece IOLs are typically very easy to capture, do an optic capture, whether be it the posterior capsular rhexis or the anterior rhexis, because their optic haptic junctions are very strong and they are not amenable to bend, and also because they do occupy less space. So when you have a 3-piece lens, the haptics can be captured and the optic can be captured much more easily. And single piece lenses, when have a much wider insertion of the haptic, and the junction can easily bend, as you may have all experienced that when you implant one of these lenses, the optic haptic junction will bend for it to go into the bag and then straighten up. So given enough pressure, these junctions can again, have a bend, and I've experienced the capture getting released very easily when you deepen the chamber. Also, capture requires a rhexis shape and size to be perfect. It has to be 5 or 5.25 millimeter. A larger rhexis size will release the capture when the AC deepens, and a smaller rhexis size will make the capture tricky and might even break the rhexis or will not allow the rhexis to stay in place. So the rhexis should be like a femtorhexis. And moreover, if we try to do a reverse optic capture of a single piece lens, of any lens which has been calculated for in the bag fixation, it will cause a myopic shift of 0.5 diopters or so. So while one may end up correcting astigmatism by putting a toric lens with a reverse optic capture, but you will end up creating a spherical error. So I don't see any great merit in doing that. While you're getting one benefit, but you're setting aside another one. Moreover, when you try to rotate to position a toric lens which has been captured, you may end up enlarging the PCR or even cause vitreous disturbance and later on create more complications for yourself. So what's the best way forward in such situations? I think if electively you're operating and if a PCR occurs before you have implanted the lens, it's best to convert your small break into a 3.5 millimeter posterior rhexis. And if you're able to do that and do an anterior vitrectomy, then you could still place a toric lens in the back with a lot of caution. If not, then you can place a 3-piece lens into the sulcus, basically a non-toric lens that would have to be, and then do an optic capture followed by a LRI if it's a small correction. You could even do a laser vision correction at about 3 months from surgery. With bioptics, you could do a surface ablation. It's very easy to correct astigmatism up to even 5 or 6 diopters with the laser now. So why create complications and more situations for yourself by trying to forcibly put a toric lens in a situation which is not meant to be and can cause problems for the patients? So if the toric IOL is already implanted when the PCR happens, so if your lens is already into the eye or possibly into the bag and then you have a PCR, maybe then only and only then as a rescue, a reverse optic capture may be attempted at best and may be left as it is if found to be stable. So very, very rare indications for doing a reverse optic capture, not in a routine PCR at all. This is one of the surgeries I thought I'll show you. It's a pediatric cataract, which we had done. And here we have implanted a toric lens after creating a posterior rhexis. So a small posterior rhexis, a perfect anterior rhexis, and then implanting the toric lens into the bag, and it stays nicely, as you can see. So there is a scientific way of doing things where you can actually do this. And yes, a reverse optic capture is just a rescue at best and should not be attempted when you, so this is how it looks. A good posterior capture, a good posterior rhexis and a well-placed toric lens because the vitreous and everything was clear, and you can do a good job like that. So how much room does that leave for a reverse optic capture of a single piece toric lens to finish? You should have a perfect femtorhexis of a 5 or 5.25 millimeters. IOL should already have been implanted if a PCR occurs, and then only you can do it as a rescue. And also, if there is no option to make a primary posterior capsular rhexis, then you can probably do this, which is again not a great idea. And you need an extremely skilled surgeon like Shell or some top surgeon to do that, because there are lots of ifs and buts, and you need a lot of luck for it to remain like that at the end of surgery. So I think I would like to rest my case with that. Thank you.
Yes, that can, yeah. I think both the parts were very well discussed. And Dr. Virendra Agarwal is there? Can I add one point, Chitra? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Yes, Mohan, you can add, and then I would want to take a question.
Reverse optic capture in a single piece lens is very, very tough. I have also done it, but what happens is once you, as Gaurav rightly said, once you open the chamber, it gets released. It's not like a multi-piece lens; it gets locked in very strongly. But a single piece lens is very difficult to do it, and also gets unlocked very easily.
Question to you, Dr. Virendra Agarwal. See, we have understood, they are telling us Dr. Shell is confident about a reverse optic capture and toric IOL stability. Do you think that the stability of these toric IOLs is possible in deep eyes? And the second question is, if you had a plate haptic toric lens, it was the plan of action for you, how would you manage in such a case?
I think once optic capture is being done, the lens does not rotate. So the toric stability is really, really very good. And I'll give my experience also. Doing reverse is definitely very, very difficult. The another thing is that the plate optic you cannot do. The thing is that when you want to rotate to the final position in toric lenses with the optic capture is really tough. But I use the Sinskey hook or a dialer hook to rotate the lens. Definitely the posterior axis, if done, is good. But if it is not done, then thorough vitrectomy through Parsonage route is a must. And at the end, when you close the case, the AC should never be shallow, because then there can be some changes and the optic capture can be released in single piece. Here, there may be controversy, but I would like to share my experience with the routine optic capture also of the single piece lenses, particularly with the techniques. With the angulation, I have never seen UGH. The only issue with the toric lenses and the premium lenses or aspheric lenses, that sometimes the rhexis is not very well centered, then it will cause some shift in the IOL position, which can be of importance. For plate haptic IOLs, you have to avoid.
No, the one other question is, normally when you do optic capture, you do not have to adjust the IOL power. But here the ELP becomes different, no? Because the optic comes forward.
Agree. The thing is that sometimes you may be having a different IOL power that is a 0.5 less diopter, same toric lens available in your armamentarium. Yeah. But I think it is not possible for majority of the places.
Yes.
The question comes that if you leave the 0.5 diopter here or there, can be otherwise also. So I think refractive correction is not of that importance unless the cylinder to be treated was less than 1 diopter or 1.5 diopter, which you can ignore. But I think having cylinder more than 1.5 diopter and leaving 0.5 diopter myopia will not make much of the difference. Patient will be more happy by getting corrected with the cylinder part.
Okay. So, Susan, I wanted to ask you one question. If you have to place a single piece IOL in the bag with an irregular PCR where you have not done a PCC, is it justified unless it is in the axis of implantation?
No, I don't think so. I wouldn't everybody has said that if there's already an IOL there and you happen to have a PCR after implanting the IOL, then possibly you could do a reverse optic capture.
No,
but
I'm
actually,
not talking of reverse optic capture for you. I'm asking that it's an irregular PCR. Would you think of placing a single piece toric in the bag for that patient, thinking there's adequate capsular support?
No, I wouldn't.
Do a PCC.
No, I wouldn't, because the very act of putting in that IOL would itself extend that PCR. That PCR is not going to remain in that.
Why not? You can do a PCC and do it, no?
No, you can do it with the PCCs.
But sometimes the PCR would be quite small and you could be able to position it. I think especially if it is in the axis along the line, the PCR is there and you can place it.
Then you're talking about converting it into a PCCC first in that case.
In case it's not possible to convert it into a PCC, but there's still adequate capsular support is there.
I am not sure, ma'am. I probably would not prefer that, but there might be others who do it. I'll just answer that previous question which you asked, though, was a very interesting one about plate haptic plate haptic IOLs. I think plate haptic IOLs have a tendency to just flex and then fall down into the vitreous. Yes. So that would be a completely wrong thing to do. I think. And one more thing I'd like to say, Dr. Gaurav, that was a completely at the edge presentation, literally standing under the wing of the plane.
Amazing.
And literally.
I badly felt like asking him a question, but I thought it'll embarrass him on the flight. So I just held myself back.
Oh, I know.
So that's
I think this is the academic equivalent of Tom Cruise, literally.
I know. It's so embarrassing also sitting here and trying to give the presentation. But that's why I said that, Shell's second situation, I wouldn't agree because he had the choice of changing the lens before, he had the rent before everything happened. In the first case, because it was a rescue, I think I would agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah. I think
very nice talks, and actually you're quite a hero too, Gaurav, the way you managed it. Anyway,
thank you, everybody.
So thanks a lot, Shell. That was a wonderful talk.